And so right now, we are moving to Santiago Siri, who is the founder and president of Democracy OS, a non-profit doing the largest global effort to deliver an open source solution to online voting. Santiago est un défenseur du Bitcoin depuis 2011, aidant les nouvelles entreprises, les sites de commerce électronique et les organismes sans but lucratif à l'adopter. Il est aussi un partenaire de Bitex.la, la plus importante bourse d'échange de Bitcoin de l'Amérique latine. En 2007, il a fondé le laboratoire de recherche d'avant-garde sur les données volumineuses qui a été racheté par la société brésilienne Bubox en 2011. He was elected as global shaper by the World Economic Forum and is an active contributor in the radio and television, or in radio and television. His first book, Activismo, was published in 2015 by Random House. We are very happy to have him join us today via Skype. And please welcome Santiago Siri, who will benefit from having somebody locally as a moderator. Vanessa, where's Vanessa? You want to come up, Vanessa, or are you going to wait until, okay. Okay, only for the Q&A. Thank you, Vanessa. And so, Santiago, please take it over from here.
Hello. Thank you for having me. It's a pity that I wasn't able to travel to Canada, basically because we found out recently that Argentines require a visa to get into Canada. So I find it one of those limitations that governments still have today. But it's good that at least I can be in this way. So I always usually do conferences in technology or in Silicon Valley environments, and I always like to start with saying that I like to talk about the elephant in the room, the one topic that usually technologists don't like talking much about, and that's politics. So my background is, as it was told in the introduction, was working on two projects that belong together. Next slide, please. So Democracy OS is a development, an open source project that we started in early 2012. That is very simple. It's an open source application that lets anybody to get informed, debate, and vote. It's an online voting tool, very simple to use. But the main thing we had when we started is that we didn't want just to make a technology that lets people vote online and that's it. We didn't want to do online surveys. We didn't want to do just a poll. We wanted to do something that had actual impact, that had actual institutional impact in the city of Buenos Aires where we were living. So we didn't do just the technology, but we also took the risk and the challenge of also doing a political party. And that's the Partido de la Red, or the net party. This political party has candidates that are committed to always vote in Congress according to what citizens decide on Democracy OS. So we did the two components, the technological component and the political component belonging together. With Democracy OS, we didn't want just to add pressure to the system, but actually have real impact. And what we were figuring at the beginning of the project is how to build this bridge between the internet, the new commons where a lot of us are engaging and debating about politics and about many different topics, and the inherited political system, the inherited governmental system that we have in place. These are two systems. And by playing out this strategy of building an open source software and building a political party, we wanted to bring the two systems together. Next slide, please. So Democracy OS is open source, and this is a very important thing because that means that it's accountable. That means that anyone can see how this software works. It can contribute to the source code, can improve it. You don't require for anybody's permission to actually implement your own server of Democracy OS. You can customize it in any possible way you want to. And that's the main reason why Democracy OS took off. Today, the software has been translated into 18 different languages, and it has been used in many different contexts around the world. In Tunisia, it was used to debate the national constitution. In Spain, it was used by a new political party called Podemos to debate internal party policy. In Mexico, the federal government used it to debate its open data policy. So we had many different use cases from activists, political parties, nonprofits, and government at many different levels, and we kept on learning from those experiences. But the main reason why the software took off, why the software got some adoption, is because it's open source. The entire source code of the software is available on GitHub, and it has already over, I think, 1,000 watchers and many contributors from around the world that are working with it. Next slide, please. And then there's the Partido de la Red, the political party. I'm from Buenos Aires, Argentina. So we did a political party for the city of Buenos Aires. And the challenge was to bring together a lot of citizens, a lot of students, activists, entrepreneurs, technologists, political scientists, people from many different places that felt that we were not properly represented by the traditional options offered by the political system back then. And we figured, why don't we create this political party? Why don't we start a different kind of political party with this very simple premise, this very simple idea that whoever gets to be in the Congress will always vote according to the software online. It's like a Trojan horse, like a Trojan legislator, whether in the eyes of the traditional political system, this legislator is an ordinary congressman, just like all the other congressmen in Congress, but we know that he's actually someone carrying the ideas of every single citizen out there, because the entire political capital of this candidate is tied to the promise of always voting to what citizens ask for online. We cannot force someone to vote or to act against his will, but we can tie the political capital of someone from a promise of this kind to his performance in the Congress. So that's what makes sense for something like the Net Party to exist, to happen. Now, next slide, please. The challenge of building a political party is not easy. And this is something very important. With the Net Party, it's also open source. It's also a very simple approach that today we have found out that there are other Partidos de la Red in Argentina and even in some other countries in Latin America. And we even found a Net Party in Seattle in the US. So this is also an idea that can be started up by anyone willing to try to do something innovative in the political environment, which is a context very well known for lacking innovation. And for us, the challenge of doing the political party has been a lot of very interesting lessons. So here are some ingredients of what we went through in order to get this started. Next slide, please. So the first challenge for us was getting the signatures. And we had to get 4,000. We actually got around 6,000, but we thought it was going to be very easy at the beginning. You know, the hackers of the Partido de la Red always claim that, you know, it's easy. You put a form online and people just sign in. But then we found out that these signatures had to be completed in forms in handwritten form. They had to be completed by triplicate. They required the real signatures. So we had to go to the streets and start talking to the neighbors, start talking to everyone in the city about this new idea. And in the Latin American context, in the Argentine context, talking about using the internet to vote, what a congressman is going to say in Congress, seems like a far-fetched idea. But it gave us the exercise to go out there and to talk to people that are not exactly like us, that are not young millennial nerds that like technology, but really start taking the challenge of talking to the taxi driver, to the guy in the drugstore, to any random neighbor walking in the street, and going beyond our comfort zone and really putting our proposition out there in the streets, and not just be in our comfort zone tweeting all day long. So the challenge of getting the signatures, it took us 4 months. Political parties usually in Argentina, they present fake signatures and they get the party approved. We took the route of actually doing real signatures and the ethical commitment of doing the things the right way. But the interesting thing of this, it was an interesting exercise to put the proposal out there in the streets. Next slide, please. When we got the party approved, we had then to be able to run for a campaign. And we ran for our first election in 2013. With zero budget, the idea we had to do a campaign was to do a comunicathon. Basically, we gathered 50 people together, creative people that are able to shoot video, to do flyers, to do graphic design, and in a 2-day marathon, to generate all the communication pieces that we were going to use throughout the 3-month campaign. This has proven to be a very successful approach. We were able to do a lot of viral videos and a lot of fun elements and fun media things that we were able to use throughout the campaign. So that was a very simple approach, and that also generated a lot of excitement around what we were doing as a political party, and a lot of bonding between us and the newcomers to the party. Next slide, please. And then the most interesting thing that happened to us during the campaign is that one day, one of the peers of the Net Party went to talk to some carpenters in La Boca and asked them if there was a way of doing a Trojan horse for real. And the carpenters asked, oh, sure, we can do it. We can build a Trojan horse, and yeah, we can do it for $400. It's very easy. So one day we found out we suddenly had like 4-meter-tall Trojan horse ready to be used. We had to find how to move it around the city. But it was an incredible strategy for us during the campaign, because suddenly imagine like in the main avenue of the city, suddenly a huge, massive Trojan horse appears out of nowhere. Absolutely every neighbor, everyone in the city starts looking at the horse, and it was a great icebreaker, conversation starter, as we wandered throughout all the neighborhoods of Buenos Aires with this piece of art. And that made a very powerful statement, especially as the campaign advanced, for people seeing us that we were not just doing campaigning on social media, but we were present in the streets, that we were in the parks, that we were in different places. People wanted to know where the Trojan horse was going to be in the next weekend, so they can go and take pictures with it and tweet about it, and generate content pieces from our own voters on social media. Like one of the peers of the Net Party likes to say, we didn't do a political campaign with marketing, we did a political campaign with a piece of art, and it worked in an extraordinary way. And I think it was the best thing, at least from the communication perspective that we had for our campaign in 2013. Next slide, please. Now, doing a political party is not like doing a startup or doing a non-profit or doing a traditional organization. Doing a political party is doing something that is aimed to compete for power in a context where power is very concentrated, and especially in Latin America, where also power is very corrupt, it has proven to be a very daring challenge. And to me, one of the biggest wake-up calls with starting up the Net Party was when I suddenly found a lot of trolls and a lot of people attacking me for no reason on social media. And here's an anecdote about this. There was one troll that had every single day kept on attacking me on social media, myself and other peers of the Net Party, and other even my contacts, my followers, like total nasty campaigning against us. So one day I got fed up and I tried to reach him, and I wrote him an email and say, hey, you want to meet over a coffee? Like, all these fears you have about us are not true. I'm glad to talk about it. And he replied to that email saying, sure, give me a call. My phone number is 150-00-0000. And he puts nice number, right? And I'm very impressed at looking at a number with 6 zeros in a row, and that's certainly not very common. So obviously I got curious about it, and I gave the guy a call, and he actually answered. And we started having this very strange conversation where this guy went from insulting me consistently to praising me consistently, and then insulting me and then praising me, until I said, what do you want? Like, desperately, what do you want? And there, this guy, he asked me for a bribe for a federal judge, that if we were able to put $1 million pesos in an envelope, then we would get our party approved and able to run for any election forever in Buenos Aires. And that was like a big shock to me, like actually being asked for a bribe, not being sure if the bribe was actually for real, or if I was going to be taped. I'm actually inclined to think that I was being actually taped. This guy, we found out later, works for the intelligence of the government in Argentina, and it was a spy, basically trying to gather information about us and trying to build fake information or recordings in order to pressure us if we suddenly become successful in the future. So that's dealing with Latin American politics, dealing with the dark side, and sadly there are many stories like this. It's the level of corruption that I was able to find close to, as I got closer to the political system. It was actually quite a scary thing, and it's one of those things whether you quit or you keep on giving the fight, and we're still obviously trying to give that fight. Next slide, please. So we ran for elections. We got 22,000 votes. That's 1.2% of the votes in the city of Buenos Aires. That was a great first election for us. It was a good start. It wasn't enough to get the candidate in the Congress. We needed 3% at least. But among the local parties, obviously national parties take 95% of the votes, but among the local parties, of 16 local parties, we ran in second place. So it was a great start for us. And you know, the day that the Net Party was most well known was on the election day. So from there onwards, the Net Party grew even bigger after that first event. Next slide, please. But one thing that did happen was that the software did got somehow elected. The City Congress of Buenos Aires they decided to pilot the use of the software, and they ran the first digital democracy pilot, as far as I know, in the Latin American territory. It was an incredible experience because all the 16 parties that had a seat in Congress, each one of those parties put a proposal in the platform, and then we put this platform for citizens to engage. 30,000 citizens engaged in the debate, and it has proven to be an incredible experience. The party in power put a proposal that was very media friendly, and to our surprise, the proposal that got most traction, most votes, was actually a proposal from a minoritarian party that only has one seat in Congress. It's the Workers' Party, and it was a proposal for improving working conditions of nurses in public hospitals. Next slide, please. This was a proposal that got over, of the 30,000 people, over 7,000 votes. It was the most voted proposal. Citizens were able to vote the proposal in general and in particular each article. And it was about reducing working hours for nurses in public hospitals from 12 hours to 6 hours, from improving their pension system, and being able to let hospitals hire new nurses as they graduated from the university. So it was a great proposal that actually people cared because the content was actually very good. And this proposal has been dormant, this bill has been dormant for 10 years. And it wasn't until it was put in this platform that it finally got treated in the floor of the Congress. This was one of the biggest challenges for us, to be able to make this connection finally between the internet and the political system. It was a 3-year-long process, and it was a very challenging experience doing the political party, building the software, and getting the citizens engaged. But that has been the kickstart of how these technologies can play out, not just in my country, but also in other countries as well. To wrap up, I'd like to share 3 stories about hacktivism in Latin America. Next slide, please. And next 2 slides. So the first story, and this is just to give an idea of how technology is playing politically in the region, is about this guy, Ad Hoc. This is a hacker that found a vulnerability in the electronic voting system used by the government. The government of Buenos Aires uses electronic voting machines. And this guy found a glitch in the system on the way that results of each polling station get sent to the government. He found the keys that actually exposed access to the machines. So he contacted the company and he published those keys on Twitter to people be aware that this glitch was actually happening. And next slide, please. He got sued, obviously, by the software company that made the voting ballots, and his home got raided, and all his equipment and all his working material got taken away. He suddenly became an enemy of the state. But interestingly, when the community found this out, Joak got over 20 Bitcoins in donations in 4 days. And this is one of the interesting things about Bitcoin, is that it's a very interesting signal of support, especially for online activists, and especially in the digital context. And 20 Bitcoins is around $5,000. In Argentina, it's 50,000 pesos. That's a significant amount of money. And it shows this amount of donation was a novelty in the political context, and it led him to be able to buy new equipment and to afford the lawyers to take care of what he's going on, and he's still going on through this trial. Next slide, please. The second story is in Caracas, in Venezuela. In 2014, in early 2014, huge student protests happened in the streets of Caracas, and a random bullet killed a young woman, and nobody knew where that bullet came from. There was a shock in the Venezuelan society for many hours. Nobody from the government or from the opposition came to give any explanation. And next slide, please. This guy, Julio Coco, he basically, during that moment, grabbed a phone and he started filming himself and ranting, and did a 40-minute-long video ranting on his phone. This is a working class guy. He lives in one of the poorest neighborhoods of Caracas. And he just made a video ranting about the situation, posted it on YouTube, and in 1 week, his followers grew from 10,000 to 350,000. And he became an authoritative voice in the Venezuelan political context. Twitter is actually very, very big in Venezuela, and now he's become a celebrity as a digital activist. Now, one of the challenges that Julio Coco faces is that he needs to remain anonymous. He and his followers need to remain anonymous while they do online activism, because otherwise he knows that he can be, he's already a public figure, but a lot of his followers can be blacklisted by the government of Venezuela and risk losing their jobs. And that's a very real threat right there. And so remaining anonymous while being and doing activism online is fundamental, because this guy, he does some assemblies and some meetings and gatherings in the parks of Caracas, but each time he does these gatherings, the colectivos, which are motorbikes of like bullies of the government, always appear and threaten and scare the people to go into those meetings. So he needs to do online digital activism and needs to do it anonymous. And it's quite a challenging situation for a digital activist like him. And the last story is in Mexico. And this is one of the things that makes you realize that what we did in Buenos Aires also happened at the same time in a completely different place in the state of Jalisco in Mexico. Mexico had a political reform that allowed for the first time independent candidates without a party. And in this year, next slide please, this guy, Pedro Kumamoto, he decided to run for Congress as an independent in a party called Wikipolitics. And in the case of Pedro Kumamoto, he got elected. He got elected with 36% of the votes. And next slide, please. And now he's going to be the first congressman that's going to take action in the state of Jalisco by taking the input of what citizens ask him to do online. So this case that happened in Buenos Aires at the same time was the same stories was being developed by a different team and a different group of activists in Mexico. So next slide, please. What do these stories have in common? Three things. The first is that it's a new generation of leaders. All of these guys, myself included, are what they call millennials. I don't like the category millennials that much. I think that the defining factor of our generation is not the year 2000, it's the internet. So the internet generation is starting to emerge, it's starting to appear. The second, obviously, they all need technology and crypto. They all use it. They use Bitcoin, they use anonymity, they use social media. Technology is the fundamental force of this new generation. And last, this revolution is not happening in the dorm rooms of Harvard. This is happening all in the developing world. And in my point of view, and I live in San Francisco, in Silicon Valley, and I love living in Silicon Valley, but it's in the developing world where there's an urgent need for change, or for finding an alternative, or for trying out different methods than what the traditional political system proposes, because politics has become so corrupt. And the drive for using Bitcoin, for example, in a country like Argentina that has high inflation, or Venezuela, is a necessity. So it's no coincidence that we're finding a lot of these cases happening in the developing world. As a final note, as I mentioned, I'm currently working in San Francisco, but working with activists all around the world, working with activists in Europe. We have a team in France. We're also collaborating with former members of the Pirate Party in Germany. We're working with a lot of activists throughout Latin America, and also with groups of activists here in the US on a new initiative that is trying to step up the game of what we have done so far with Democracy OS and the Net Party. This is a website that I want to invite you to join. It's democracy.earth. It's the first website out there that is a .earth website. It's simply what we're doing now is when we started working 3 years ago doing Democracy OS and the Net Party, we had these two components, the technological component and the political component, the institutional component to go into the traditional system. But now the internet is developing a new layer of institutional technologies like the blockchain that enable the possibility of building institutions and organizations in a purely digital way. And with democracy.earth, we're working very closely to these technologies that enable decentralized governance and decentralized voting, and the idea of building purely digital organizations of all kinds with this broad community of activists from around the world. So I'd like to invite you to join you to democracy.earth. We are a non-profit in Silicon Valley, but with many chapters out there in the world. And as a final note, the last slide, I think it is basically we're trying to build global commons for the 21st century and understand, as the internet has already transformed culture and media and communications, I'm very convinced that in the next 10, 20 years, we're going to see the internet transform institutions. Thank you.
Hi, so my name is Vanessa Paisani. I'm the program director with 21 Inc. So our mission is to accelerate leadership in the Atlantic region, and I think democracy and civic engagement is part of that. So I've been asked to facilitate a question and answer session for Santiago, and I know that there's some Renaissance College students in the room. I heard that you might have some questions, so I have a couple of questions here, but I'd like to open it up to the floor first if there's anyone with a pressing question. Yeah, do you want to come up? There's a mic right here. And I'll repeat the question in case you don't hear it.
Hi. I think you mentioned that in Buenos Aires specifically, there were more than one net parties. So I was just wondering, what are the limitations or the challenges and positives of having those parties competing against each other in elections?
Yeah. So it's not in Argentina. We had we had the net party, the Partido de la Red in Buenos Aires, but we found out that in different cities of the country that new net parties emerged in the city of La Rioja, Rosario, Santa Fe, Córdoba, that are trying to replicate what happened in Buenos Aires. I believe that these parties can be completely autonomous and self-organizing and basically rely on the same principles. All the content from the logo, from the message, from the manifesto is free and open source and easily adaptable. Obviously, one of the challenges is building a narrative so we can all share a common goal and be able to share this common goal with others to join this movement. And we're learning in that process. The net parties in two cities, in Mar del Plata and La Rioja, already got the signatures to be able to run for a seat in Congress, in their local Congress. And we try to build a network where we collaborate and exchange information and learn from each other. Obviously, the party in Buenos Aires is the most advanced one regarding the digital agenda that we're trying to pursue. But it's a learning process. It's a constant learning process. It's a learning process from the leadership perspective, from the adapting to the rules of the traditional. One thing that happens that is actually one of the things that I'm going through these days is that initially the net party was a new or innovative idea that tries to disrupt traditional politics. But sooner or later, traditional politics and the narratives of traditional politics penetrate the net party, because citizens, each one that comes to this party also comes with their ideological and their socioeconomical backgrounds that eventually, after a certain period of time, the history of your country penetrates the history of this new movement, and dealing with that culture clash is also a challenge in itself. And it's what happens, I think, after we've been already doing this for 3 years. So we're in that learning process right now.
Awesome, thank you. Yes.
Hi, Santiago. I'm just wondering how you deal with, so most of the platforms you're talking about are online, obviously, they're internet platforms, how you deal with people who don't have access to the internet or are, not educated in how to use it, older people, etc.?
Great question, and that's especially true in Latin America. And first of all, a couple of things, the statistics. In a city like Buenos Aires, is particularly very well connected. 75% of the homes have internet access, 88% of those homes broadband access, and but still you can find a digital gap. And when we look closely to that digital gap, it's not socioeconomical. It's actually not socioeconomical because every single under 30-year-old, 100% of them have access to the internet in a city like Buenos Aires. 93%, these are official national statistics, 93% access social media at least once a week. So when I found that statistic for the first time, I thought, this is really weird. Like every single under 30-year-old has access to the internet and 93% have Facebook. So that means that if I go to a slum, to one of the poorest neighborhoods, one of the most marginal neighborhoods in the city, I should be able to find kids, teenagers being connected. And the truth is that that's actually happening. When I went to the slums of Buenos Aires, I saw 15, 20-year-olds. They don't have access to water. They don't have access to a lot of basic resources that are required, but they all have cell phones. They all have very big cell phones and internet access. They care about that. And because of the reduce of cost of access to computing, they are able to access. So the digital divide is more generational. When you look at the digital divide in Latin America, it's actually generational rather than socioeconomical. It's my parents or or grandparents are not as connected as the younger generation. What this means is that a pun that I used during the campaign a lot was that only rich people think that the internet is for rich people. It's really interesting to see how the new generations are pretty much very well connected. And what we're trying to do is long-term politics. We know that we're not going to win power in the next year or probably in the next couple of years. But in the long term, in 10 years, 20 years from now, what kind of world we're going to be living in? And that certainly is a world where the internet is a predominant player. And the new generations get it. And the new generations get that kind of access. Also, another thing that I like playing rhetorically is that what kind of access the current traditional political system gives to its citizens right now. We only get to vote once every 2 years. Voting once every 2 years from a bandwidth perspective is basically electing one of 15 options, and considering one option, 1 byte, it's only 16 bytes per 2 years. So the bandwidth of interaction that we have with the political system is really very, very tiny. It's like we get to send an emoji to the political system every 2 years. And that's actually what we do. We pick our favorite emoji and we send it to the political system every 2 years. And that's the kind of access 99% of society has to democratic decision making. So say in a city like Buenos Aires, where you have 60 representatives for a city of 4 million, seems like a very, very concentrated, a lot of concentration of power. I think that we need to put the access question also in terms of what kinds of rights we're able to exercise as citizens other than just voting. I think technology certainly helps to lower the barriers for participation drastically. Every time we retweet, we're actually voting in a way, or when we put a like on Facebook, we're voting in a way. Those votes don't have institutional impact. But I think that we can start, when we look at the experience of Wikipedia, we can start understanding that maybe these kinds of approach can help make decisions that happen in power more legitimate and take advantage of the collective intelligence.
Awesome. Yes.
Hello, Santiago, and I'm just sort of wondering real quick before I ask my question, have you heard the English term, the tyranny of the masses?
Yes, it's in Spanish too.
Well, there you go. So my question for you is along those lines, which is there's a lot of uninformed individuals out there that have very strong views towards, say, homosexuality or indigenous people. If it's just sort of one vote, one per issue.
Yeah, direct democracy.
Yeah, that is the purest form of democracy. How do you have those controls so like this, the minority are not subject to the tyranny of the masses?
I have the same concern. Tyranny of the masses is not a desirable outcome. It's the outcome that has, I think populism in Latin America is basically that. When we think about democracy, we tend to think like, well, there's democracy is about voting, and then you have direct democracy, you have representative democracy, different breeds of democracy. But when you trace back the origins of the term, the Greeks, when they spoke about democracy, they used the concept of agora. And the agora was the technology, that was the park where they all gathered together to deliberate and vote. But etymologically, what agora means is thinking together. And in the Greek poems, agora is an antonym for war. It's the opposite of war. And I think that democracy is always a work in progress. It's not like we have one recipe for democracy. Democracy is not an absolute idea. It's an incomplete idea. If it was an absolute idea, it would be a totalitarian ideology, just like all the other ideologies out there. Democracy is the exception to ideology. And in that sense, I think that democracy is a work in progress where we're constantly trying to figure out how we can do this agora, how we can do this thinking together. And certainly the internet is like putting in our face a lot of things about how masses behave. I have a lot of trolls in social media, and I like the troll situation is like a big problem of social media. And certainly it's not a desirable thing to have all these kinds of attitudes altering proper decision-making processes. So I think that this is a very important design challenge looking at the future. I think that certainly the direct democracy approach, one person, one vote, is likely to end up with this tyranny of the masses outcome. But we can design much more sophisticated ways of decision-making online because we're using software. And software enables a level of interaction and a level of connectivity and of intelligence that is really incredible when you take advantage of it in the right way. One of the things that I'm researching a lot is this concept of liquid democracy. There's a lot of talking about this, and this is an idea that basically you have all the power and you can vote directly on any topic that you want, or you can delegate your voting power not to a politician, but to a friend, if you want a politician too, but to a Facebook contact, to a colleague, to someone you trust, and that person can vote on your behalf on the certain on the given amount of topics that you want him or her to vote on your behalf. So in that way, you build a mesh where power gets delegated and emerges bottom up, rather than you have only a couple of options top down. And this is still there's a lot of research going on in this field. Google has been working. There's a paper on Google called Google Votes. I recommend to check out that paper. It has a lot of insights of 3 years testing this kind of approach internally inside Google. And there have been other pieces of software out there that tried to do this, but weren't that successful. So it's an ongoing field of research that it's interesting to learn and should lead to something better than just direct democracy.
Thank you. Thank you, Santiago. That was a very stimulating talk. My question maybe builds on one of your last points about that you can give your vote to a friend or a colleague or whatever. Because what I was going to say when I came up here is, how do you ensure trust in a system when all of a sudden it's out of your hands? Like right now, for most of our voting levels here in Canada anyway, we have to go and our name is checked off and there's ID and blah, 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 and someone signs off on the vote. At the municipal level here, what we do is we put our thing through a voting machine and it actually counts. But that's, as far as I know, that's as far as we go in terms of, using technology and so there would be a huge trust issue, especially when, potentially as a system becomes more well used, it is very open to, those forces that you talked about to manipulate it potentially. And so how do you deal with the trust issue and to making sure that it's still open and transparent?
Excellent question. And that's, I think, one of the biggest challenges for digital democracy to take off. What differentiates an election from a poll or a survey is two things. The institutional commitment to accept the outcome of the voting or the election or the poll, and proper identity validation. And online identity is not an easy problem. It's a very complex problem. Today, most of us, for example, use Facebook to log in into different applications online. But what that also means is that theoretically speaking, Facebook can impersonate us in any website out there because they have our login info. They are Facebook. So how are you able to identify yourself online without having a dominant player like Facebook, which is basically, Facebook is like a government. Mark Zuckerberg is like a head of state. Impersonating you or like this super node being your trust mediator. How you are able to do decentralized trust. Today, for the way Democracy OS is used, a lot of people do simple validation of identity by checking your email or having your email be limited to a single or the same domain for an organization. So that's basic identity validation. But I think that the end vision, the end goal of this is to be able to figure out how you can do identity validation in a decentralized way by making sure that you control the data and not a third party is controlling the data for the two sides to acknowledge each other. There's a lot of research going on in this field. There's a company called onename.com that is trying to do exactly this using the blockchain. This is one of the biggest problems that we're still facing from the technological point of view. There are some protocols that we are curious about implementing. One is that in order to get your identity validated, you have to at least have another person that had his or her identity validated, have a Skype call with you, and then certify that you are the person that you say you are on the records of an organization. That could be an approach. The challenge is how you do this peer-to-peer validation rather than a central validation where you rely on a government. I think that this idea of decentralizing identity, what leads to at the end of the day is to this concept of personal sovereignty, where the sovereign institution, it's yourself as a citizen, and you are the one who is in control of your data, of your information, and not some large corporation or large government, but rather I think what the internet enables is that we become that the powerful entity, it's the citizen itself. So identity validation today is done in a very standard way, like most applications do it today. But we want to step up that game and try to understand how we can do decentralized blockchain identity validation, and that's a big one.
Awesome. Thank you. One of my questions was, you mentioned a bit about decentralizing power, and I checked out your platform this morning, so I was wondering how you felt that your platform and decentralizing power can play into the conversation around climate change, especially coming into the Paris Forum.
Excellent question. Actually, let me search for this. So there's, if you go to, I'm not finding the link right now, but we have, I'm gonna tweet it right away. For the Paris climate change, there has been put by the team in France. There's the Democracy OS team in Paris. They had put a democracy OS instance with 10 proposals to be debated for the Paris meeting, for the COP21. And I think that there are two things that new generations explain to older generations, like kids explain to adults. Those two things are technology and the environment, ecology. That kind of knowledge usually comes from the younger generations to the older ones. And I think that as we're able to develop activism in these digital networks that connect us to a global consciousness, I think that we're certainly going to be able to address big global problems like climate change in very interesting ways. It's this, and I think that this kind of approach of digital activism leads to this notion that we need to figure out how institutions are going to play out in this on the internet, and how we are going to be able to organize as citizens, not just from our national perspective or from the country we were born, but also as this new layer of the internet is bringing us this new layer of citizenship that is a much more cosmopolitan way of exercising our rights. And it's certainly still in its diapers, like it's the very early days of this. But as I see phenomena like Bitcoin is a currency that works globally, that is able to transfer money from point A to point B in the planet without intermediation of banks or nation states. And the fact that we're able to do that transfer of value, that transfer of power without any kind of intermediation, is actually giving the internet a sovereign status that is right in its own self, rather than asking for permission. And I think that certainly for big global problems, out-of-the-box solutions are going to be found much more likely in this new layer that we're building. New generations around the world are building and moving towards to, as we get more connected. And I certainly hope that this can help address global issues in the short term and in future generations. I'm going to tweet in my Twitter account when I find the proper link of the Democracy OS instance for COP21 in the meeting in Paris. So you can check that out. My Twitter handle is @SantiSiri with S the 2 times.
Awesome. So that's all the time we have, and thanks so much. I have a bunch of notes to think about. How can we potentially take some of what you're doing on your platform, Democracy OS, and I'll check out democracy.earth as well, into the conversations that we're having at 21 Inc. around civic engagement and how do you be a global citizen while still having impact both regionally and locally. So thanks so much for that new perspective.
Thank you very much. I'm sorry I wasn't able to be there with you today. And find me on Twitter.
Go ahead, Santiago. You wanted to say something?
Thank you for. I'm sorry I wasn't able to be there today, and easy to be reached on Twitter, twitter.com/SantiSiri. Reach me there, and I'll be glad to keep the conversation going.
Well, we certainly appreciated your interventions today. I think everybody was paying a lot of attention at the end of a 2-day conference. You certainly managed to keep everybody on their toes and gave us some great information. I'd be remiss not to mention that I made the wrong assumption. We had no technical issues. We did have a logistical issue. And I think it's after 2 days of so much hard work from Signature Sound, I think we owe them a thank you for making this possible. I mean, the technology was seamless. Thank you very much, guys, in the background. So on that, we're going to move on with with Richard. Richard, where are you? Richard, you want to come up here? And we have a few words from Richard to explain to us something he's been up to. Very weird, but I think we're going to see the fruits of it.
Absolutely. I'll just use this mic.
Yes.
So yeah, my name is Richard Pietro. I like to say that I create civic engagement as art as opposed to civic engagement as a duty or as a responsibility or as punishment, right? Because judges issue community service as punishment. And one of the things that I'm exploring personally right now is adaptation. You saw one of my projects 2 days ago, Open, which was an adaptation of the Matrix with regards to open government and open data and open source. This morning, you saw a different adaptation called We Are Open People, which was an adaptation of George Carlin's rant, I Am a Modern Man. And today, you're going to see an adaptation of a 1999 song called You're Free to Wear Sunscreen. And it's an adaptation to make it more relevant to civic engagement. It's something I've been working on for some time now. I was going to release it in 2016, but I asked Nick, I'd like to offer you guys a bit of a gift as a memory for GovMaker and create like a draft video, very rough. It took me, I put it together essentially in 20 hours of what's been happening over the course of the last few days with you guys as participants and collaborators. It was not one of those sort of like things that most people do. I really want to sort of practice what I preach. So with that being said, if Darren, if you could please play the video.
Wear sunscreen. If I could offer you only one tip for the future, sunscreen would be it. The long-term benefits of sunscreen have been proved by scientists, whereas the rest of my advice has no basis more reliable than my own meandering experience. I will dispense this advice now. Enjoy the power and beauty of civic engagement. Oh, never mind. You will not understand the power and beauty of civic engagement until you no longer have the energy or the time. But trust me, in 20 years, you'll look back at causes and recall in a way that you can't grasp now how much possibility lay before you and how much you could have really changed. You are not as weak as you imagine. Don't worry about the challenge, or know that the challenge is best conquered with slow and deliberate steps. The real trick is finding good people to help you with the task at hand, the kind who won't leave you in the lurch at 4 p.m. on some rough Friday. Do one thing every day that tests you. Right. Don't be reckless with other people's time. Don't put up with people who are reckless with yours. Read. Don't waste your time on getting credit. Sometimes you're ahead, sometimes you're behind. The road is long, and in the end, it is the journey that matters. Remember your achievements and your failures. Ignore the trolls. If you succeed in doing this, tell me how. Save your old ideas. Delete your old selfies. Live. Don't feel guilty if you don't succeed right away. The most interesting people I know didn't succeed until after many failures. Some of the most interesting people I know are still failing. Get plenty of air. Be kind to your network. You'll miss them when they're gone. Maybe you'll go viral. Maybe you won't. Maybe you'll inspire people. Maybe you won't. Maybe you'll go to jail. Maybe you'll get your own biopic after you're dead. Whatever you do, don't think you did it all by yourself or think that you played no role. Your collaborative spirit is welcomed, and so is everybody else's. Enjoy your mind. Use it every way you can. Don't be afraid of it or what other people think of it. It is the greatest instrument you'll ever own. Think. Even if you have nowhere to do it but in your own living room, create something, even if no one will see it. Do not troll people, because nobody likes a monster. Get to know your community. You never know who could help you in the future. Be nice to your teachers. They're the best link to other great minds and the people most likely to stick by you when things get tough. Understand that ideas come and go, but for a precious few, you should execute on. Work hard to bridge the gaps in your skills and knowledge, for as the older you get, the more you need to stay ahead of the curve. Live downtown once, but leave before it makes you hard. Live in suburbia once, but leave before it makes you soft. Have fun. Accept certain inalienable truths. The world will get more complex, problems will get more daunting, you too will get old. And when you do, you'll fantasize that when you were young, the world was small, problems were simple, and people were informed. Get informed. Don't expect things to change by themselves. Maybe they will, odds are they won't. In either case, you can only be sure they change for the better if you're involved. Don't get stuck in the weeds, or by the time you start working on the important stuff, you'll be tired as heck. Be careful with news outlets and make sure to get all perspectives. Information is delivered as a narrative and used to sway people into certain points of view. Don't fall into the trap, stay out of the fray, and remain balanced. But trust me on the sunscreen.
Don't think I've ever had the pleasure of seeing something like that before at a conference. Congratulations, Richard. On behalf of everybody, thank you for doing that. It was fun then to do it, and it's fun now to see it. Listen, I hope you all agree that we've had quite a great time here at GovMaker 2015. It was time well spent together. I would not want the microphone to drop. There you go. What have we heard? Well, way too many things for me to go through them. You've raised a lot of them. Today, Saeed raised good points like, we can address those challenges, although they are big and complex, we know. Used it, that cooking example sticks with me. On the panel, we've learned things like mobility is the first point of contact with your government. We've come to appreciate that our procurement process needs to innovate, to break cycles, and brings innovation, has to bring innovation. We've learned from Dana, or before that, Cathy, and by listening to NB+, New Brunswick is moving forward. New Brunswick is on point. We need to further it, but we are. Dana, she talked to us about getting out there, doing the designs outside in, being with the people that use what it is that we're trying to give to them. There were so many messages from the lightning talks. I so much appreciate them, and as I'm sure you did as well. I'm not going to go through all of them. I do want to say that outside on the tables are still those bowls from the lightning talks. And they are genuinely trying to get people engaged in the conversations to find solutions to those big complex problems they've been talking about. I encourage you to leave your name, leave your contact in one of the bowls, and get involved, as I'm sure you all are, and maybe you could be a bit more. One last time, I'd like to thank those who made these 2 days possible. We have organizing partners. This couldn't have been done without the leadership of the New Brunswick Social Policy Network, the Government of New Brunswick, and Mars. We have sponsors that have helped make this happen: BioNB, Pond Center, Adapt MC, City of Fredericton, Deloitte, St. Thomas University, Faculté des Études Supérieures et de la Recherche de l'Université de Moncton, Mount Allison University, and the University of New Brunswick. Particularly want to thank Nick Scott and his team, all our speakers and panelists that made GovMaker 2015 possible. Please stay in touch. The dialogue is really where the value occurs, not necessarily during the 2 days, but thereafter. So let's make this count. And merci à tous et à toutes.
I just want to thank Christian Couturier for supporting the GovMaker conference 2 years in a row. He's our Chief Information Officer with the Government of New Brunswick, and we couldn't have had such a great success without him and without Lorna Brown for all of her help in making this happen. And I am done. So thank you everyone for coming.